So this is part 6, and I decided that the references are quite important to share. Um, and so number 1 was a notice I sent to Tedros Ghebreyesus, who's the head of the Director General of the World Health Organization, and Sir Jeremy Farrar, inventor of absolutely deadly mosquitoes with IP technology in them and deformities and kill switches and all sorts of things that could collapse any amount of habitats, life forms as they gene transfer around, and also drive worse variants, as seen in Brazil. And who is now sadly, well, actually, he was during the last pandemic the head scientist at the WHO, but now he's been made assistant director general, I think. Um, Plus, obviously, Centre Tedros and 2,500 heads of state, health ministers, defence ministers, and other self appointed authorities. Notice to reject the amendments and discard the treaty unless the following questions can be adequately answered, and specifically the question: do the pandemic treaty's prevention, preparedness, and response principles of researching, producing, and scaling up technologies contravene the international treaty prohibiting the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction? So basically that was a major due diligence list, which I created. I'd already done it to stop the mosquitoes being released in Bali. And so I adjusted it to all the things that happened during the lockdown, without regulation, without independent testing, without knowing the ingredients, without being able to monitor it. And I just said, how did this work out for you? Not great, was it really? And I really wanted to do it because I knew that another silent deadline of the WHO's was coming up. So that was end of 2023, where the WHO make this plan. So usually, as we know, vaccines and actually anything to do with new drugs have to have a certain amount of time, or new policies have to have a certain amount of time to come in. So it's like, I think it's like 2 years altogether. They wanted to, make that warp speed as well, so they could have an idea, in January, and it would be implemented worldwide, including mandated drugs, to whole populations in 4 months. And they didn't kind of say, oh, what does everyone think about this? They said, no, we're going to, if nobody says anything, we'll consider that an agreement. Which very like, for example, Ireland's MAD. We're just letting you know that as of the 17th of June 2025, all your biological data belongs to us. We're going to consider it donated. So if you fall unconscious, your tissues, your organs all belong to us, unless you actively opt out. So it's a mirror of the WHO policy, and what they want is the Ireland has achieved 2 things. They first of all they've now sort of claimed that right to people's biological data and to people's biological materials, which totally contravenes the constitutional integrity of the human body, and structural integrity, every sort of integrity of the human body, and your own authority over what happens to it. But also, to opt out, you have to actually re-register again. So if you were saying, I have, like I did, I no longer consent to being governed by you numpties, especially if you're going to be asking artificial intelligence what to do. I'm not going to respect that. I mean, who would in their right mind? That's not an authority. That's just a major interference, and everything else. So, but basically, there's this silent, and the first silent one was was just after I managed to stop the mosquito release in Bali. And so I thought, right, we need to get wake everybody up to the fact that if we don't start making decisions, we don't start writing and saying no, 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 at each moment, we're going to lose our ability to make decisions. It's going to be the who's decision, what's released, what's deployed, what's activated, what's injected. These are people who have no background. I was worried about whether the people who get the dog pounds and horse pounds in Ireland had no animal welfare record or policy, and now we have like people in Switzerland with terrible track records. I mean, the head of the World Economic Forum is, for goodness sake, the ex Nestle CEO, famous for saying, "I don't think access to fresh water is a human right." And Tedros himself has an extraordinary history, and we don't even have to go there. It seemed perfectly reasonable to start writing and say, "Oh, please show us your due diligence, operational and financial." And actually, what came of it is everybody else started writing to me. So I have the complete conflicts of interests lineup for every single corporation, who benefited, how, what they invested in, what they got back, and which is how I know that Pfizer, for example, was very early on, back in 1990, developing the COVID SARS research. And now they sitting on whatever it was, 63 billion profit and ownership of all our media. Along with Bill Gates and a few other of those guys who want to control everything, and maybe there's even shadow directors behind them as well, even more sinister. But who knows? It seems like a bit of a competition. What could be most sinister? So anyway, two also sent to, because you have to do 3 notices, that's the thing, sent to Tedros again and 2,500 heads of state, health ministers, and it was about the Internet of Things being the vector. So basically everything that you do, that you have, is smart. We used to hear about it like, oh, now all toasters and everything, TVs, have their own camera, collecting their own data on who's buying them and how often they're being used. Same with the smart meters for electricity, and same for the smart synthetic pesticides that are measuring the soil fertility, but also obviously able to submit and receive data, which going into our food, going into animals, going into our bodies, and now the circle is very nearly closed, that we are all 100% part of that Internet of Things. You will have all either experienced or seen or been shown that anybody who took the COVID shots now will show up as having a Bluetooth, what's that called? A Bluetooth address. So I was in Thailand and with one other man doing a reflexology course, and there was 24 of us on it. 2 of us were having coffee, and he said, "No, I can show you about this." So he showed on his I think it was an Apple phone. I don't know if the Microsoft ones managed to kind of block it out, like, but on the Apple phone it said, there they are, 22 unknown device Bluetooth. And even that isn't true. I'm sure they weren't unknown devices. I'm sure they know exactly who and what and where everybody is. And it's a huge, massive infringement, quite apart from being very dangerous, if they can send us also through electroporation these electrical pulse transmissions of damaging frequencies, damaging genetic modifications. There is no limit to what they want to do to us. So I think that's what that notice was about. 3, the UPU request for a mea culpa. So a mea culpa is when the head of something, a leader, says, do you know, I'm going to take responsibility for my part in that, and I'm going to issue a statement, and I'm going to say, and who better than the Postal Service, really, who better, to say, I'm really sorry, I realise that through postal fraud, we have been perpetuating this massive exploitation of the living, of the living people, basically. And by basically, we've been saying, oh, Mr., Mrs., Ms., all those things immediately put you into an incorporated state. That means you can interact with the government, with the banks, and they can tell you that you are responsible for debt. None of that is true. Literally none of that is true. And if the UPU had actually done what I asked them to do, they would have said, they would have learned, everybody would have learned with this public notice that actually we should be referred to as living men and women who have a superior jurisdiction. It was the living men and women who even founded the UPU on a basis of a treaty which called the Universal Service Obligation that the UPU promised to manage the entire commercial jurisdiction, like all the corporations, and to make sure there was a fair and level trading field internationally, which of course there isn't now. They've absolutely usurped the living jurisdiction who founded them, and now are just facilitating the maritime commercial jurisdiction. So, and they then go around dropping their universal service obligation. I mean, if you go to any of these developing countries, you're hard pushed to find a way to post something or receive something by post. A whole contingent had to go to Switzerland to say, you can't just drop the postal and logistics. That's the bit we need. In fact, what they actually did was they misappropriated massive universal service obligation funds, like trillions, and gave it to their telecommunications partner in Switzerland, who just went around building more military infrastructure, masts, and all said to be for communications, but not our communications. So that's number 3. I think I better stop there because that's already 13 minutes. I'm only on the 3rd reference.